So, fun story, when I lost my wallet in Florida and had to fly without a license, and my husband was like, "I am Apple tagging everything you own. You cannot be left alone." Um, One of the questions, so I'm gonna get so much shit for this, but so basically how you can fly without a license, because fun fact, you can. You have to get there and they have to interview you.
Mhm.
And I was not the only person that was without a license. There were 4 other people behind me that did not have licenses.
I have a lot of
Um,
questions about this.
and so the TSA guy was very nice. And he basically calls someone. I'm imagining it's someone probably in the government. And they were on hold for like 20 minutes until this person answers. And then he has the AirPod in his ear and they ask him questions that then he has to ask me and I have to answer them. So it's a high stress situation. You're like, am I going to know the answer? So one of the questions was like, give me an immediate relative. I obviously said my mom. And he was like, what's her birth date? I know the birth date. Thank goodness. Last 4 digits of your phone number. Yes. What county do you live in? And I was like, I'm not sure. And I was like, I know what town I live in and I know what state I live in. I was like, why do I need to know what county I live?
Because that's where you pay all your stupid taxes.
And so I was like, Cook, DuPage,
Oh my god.
Lake. Like I know the counties around the area. And he was like, pick one. I was like, Cook. And I tell Nick when I get on the plane, he was like, you're fucking kidding me, Becca. We live in
It's like
Kane County Cougars. How do you not know what county we live in?
also Cook County is like the worst county in the
We
state
used
of
to live in
Illinois.
Cook County. That's where we used to live in Westchester was
Oh,
Cook
okay.
County,
Okay.
I think. And so, anyways, now my husband has like forever ammo to make fun of me all the time because I do not know
My
these things.
gosh.
And I was like, I am very smart in many areas of life. I keep track of things for everyone else in our family except for myself.
But it is true. We did also all go to the King County Cougars game a few years ago. But what you're describing here to me, like number one, they have facial recognition. So like
I know.
they can watch us anywhere and everywhere at all
Yeah.
times. So I'm not surprised that you can fly without a license, whatever.
Yes.
The Night Agent. Have you watched that show?
Love Night Agent.
So that's what this is reminding me of when you're saying that he's like calling someone, waiting for 20
Ooh,
minutes.
night
And then he's
agent?
like,
Yeah, they're calling a night agent? Probably not, but I do love that show. But
it's a good show.
anyways, so females are much different than men. That is gonna be my transition into today's topic around testosterone therapy for women.
That maybe you just need a little testosterone and you'll remember what county you live.
I had my testosterone with me. I do feel like I am operating on higher wavelengths since implementing testosterone. I really do. I feel like I'm much more clear. I definitely notice an impact in my sex drive. Um, so we want to talk about it today because we hear about testosterone for men all the time. Like you can probably go to a gym and look around and tell me who is on testosterone that is a male in most cases, especially the people that are on probably super physiological levels of testosterone.
Along with many other things, but yes.
I met one of them I've seen him at the gym. His name's Ammo. Super nice guy.
Okay.
But he was talking to me about him and I get along. We've worn some, I have my, Maha hat. He's worn some Lions Not Sheep stuff. So we've talked. But anyways, he was like, I'm on BPC because I messed up my knee. He's like, I'm also on testosterone. You could probably guess that. And I'm like, yeah, because you look roided out on the top of your body and not on the lower part of your body. But anyways, you can understand like for men, testosterone is very common. And you can often look at men's blood work and very clearly say, like, you need this, probably at this dose. And in reality, see great improvements over a very short period of time in a male. It's just kind of the way it is. Women are not that way. Women are very delicate and intricate comparative to men. We are emotional. Our hormonal issues come from many, many things. Men's are pretty straightforward. Like it's usually probably some metabolic issues with men, probably some stress and testosterone deficiencies. Like women, there are so many moving parts.
Well, I mean, number one, we're designed to create human beings. I mean, some people out there do believe that males can have children and those types of things, but unfortunately, the science shows us that females were born with uteruses and then we are here to create. I'm just saying, some people out there truly believe this. My neighbor told me that she believes that men can milk. And I was like,
Mm,
well, it's time for me to go because
mhm.
I'm not going to align with you in this conversation. But when we think about this, like really, like, so let's think about the menstrual cycle, right? This very, I mean, it's just insane to me if I really think about the whole cycle of what we can do to grow humans, right? So you have estrogen and progesterone fluctuating, you have all of these things. Of course, that's going to bring on some emotions. Men don't have that, right? So that's why it's a little bit more straightforward. But what I think is really important, and we can look at this in terms of toxins as well for women and testosterone, the levels have declined. I mean, they decline as we age, same thing for men, but the research for men, I think it's like 40% of men now are deficient in testosterone, not just optimized, but they're deficient because
Well,
of
and
all
it
of
changes with age range. It gets worse and worse
right.
as men age, but like 20-year-olds are who should have very high
Good.
levels of testosterone are looking like they're in their 70s.
Yes. But when we look at, I believe it was age 45 for the men that I was reading something about this
Mhm.
the other day because we're going to this conference in Utah in a few weeks here. And they were talking about optimal, not normal, right? So this is another big thing. So let's just preface this before we continue. You can have labs with a very wide range and you're in that range. You're not high, you're not low, you're not flagged. And nobody's asking the question, how do you feel? What are your symptoms? And so this is the hard part with hormone replacement therapy, right? Because we go off a lot more of symptoms. Yeah, you can have some ballpark ranges where people are saying this is what could be optimal, but there's really no set optimal range. We have the conventional ranges for your testosterone, of course. Um, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to feel good there because how you hear these hormones, just like anything else, is going to play a role with how that changes your symptoms. So that's the hard part. But I believe too that when we looked at the children and all of the toxins and all of the things that are coming in through our food, whether that is things that you're injecting into your body because of said schedules that you need, it is impacting how males and females are experiencing testosterone. And heavily associated with infertility rates, right? And,
Mhm.
and this is where also we can get into the whole conversation of like the BPAs and the plastics and looking also at mycotoxins and things like that. But I think the prevalence for both male and female for underdiagnosis is pretty widespread because, like you said, they're not talking about this for women. Yet testosterone is one of our most dominant. I think believe it's more dominant even than
It
estrogen.
is. It's the most abundant hormone in the female body.
Yeah,
And you will hormone levels marked on a lab for a female.
because it
So
starts at like zero.
it starts at 0. Exactly. You will see high. You can see high levels marked for females, but men's, you'll see low. You will see low testosterone. It has to be like clinically low, which isn't going to make people feel awful. But for females, you guys, my free testosterone was zero point 0.7. It wasn't low. It wasn't marked as low. I can tell you that is very low. Anything under, honestly, I think a 2 for a female for free testosterone without being on something is low. And the thing to understand with hormone replacement therapy for females, you will probably have to go on a dose and change that dose over time because things change. Your stress changes, your detoxification is going to change, your diet, your activity level, all of those things are going to impact how you experience your hormones and the levels that your body needs. So if you have someone that is prescribing hormone therapy for you and never changing your dose,
Run.
run in the other direction. Find someone different that is going to test labs, talk to you about your symptoms, and manipulate doses as needed because it will change, especially if you go on hormone replacement in premenopausal years, perimenopausal years. That's going to look different than postmenopausal. So today, mainly, we want to talk about testosterone, though. And why do we explore this? Because it's not FDA approved. Your OB or doctor cannot give it to you, and it cannot be covered under insurance, which, in my opinion, is stupid. It is so stupid because it is driving so many symptoms for women. And we're going to talk about why it's low for a lot of women. Hint, one of the reasons is birth control, which is the majority of the population at this point. I believe in developed countries, 80% of women at some point in their life will be on some form of birth control, which drastically decreases hormone levels, including testosterone. But let's look at the 3 main issues we often see with women.
Yeah, and I think let's also preference that we've done podcasts on this before in terms of libido, because this is the big one that people most
Mhm.
commonly think about. It's also not just testosterone. Like, you have to be doing other
Yes.
things with your diet, cleaning up your lifestyle, right? Really making time for your partner or your spouse and being intentional. Because at the end of the day, you could take testosterone and that libido not really change. And it's because you're putting it in when you have an inflammatory state, a lot of other metabolic dysfunction, and you're just not happy in the relationship. So that's just one thing I want to preference here, because we do have another podcast episode on that and things that you can do to support testosterone levels. But that's one big thing that people think about is libido. And it is. Testosterone plays a big role in our drive and our libido, the same way that it does with our energy. So a lot of people walk around low testosterone and feel just really kind of lethargic. The way that I kind of say this in terms of mood to some of my clients that I've worked with, and I'd love to hear your thoughts here, is that you just have a flat effect. Like, you're not depressed, you're not anxious, but you're just kind of blah. Like, you've lost your drive for life. Nothing really seems to excite you anymore. And I think part of this can also go hand in hand with maybe the season of life that the person is in, because we do see that, again, testosterone declines as we age. Maybe perhaps going through a time in your life where you've lost yourself. You gave all of your energy and love to your family and children if you had them. And now you're kind of looking in the mirror going, who am I? So I think that has to also be considered as well. But that's really what I see in terms of mood. Like, they're just never excited about anything.
Mhm.
And then weight gain. We do definitely see this for individuals with weight gain, though that can be many other issues that are also part of driving low
Yes.
testosterone.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, if I'm being honest, I feel like the women that I talk to, the default is low energy, no sex drive, and weight gain. Like, that is how people feel. They're depressed or anxious. They have no motivation or drive to be intimate, and they put on weight, especially in the stomach. So some other symptoms though that have to go along with low testosterone, physical, you have muscle weakness or loss of muscle mass. Thinning hair and dry skin is often low testosterone. Vaginal dryness or discomfort during intercourse can also be low estrogen with that. Mood changes, depression, anxiety, irritability, difficulty concentrating and memory problems, like you can't remember things, you're not mentally sharp. Changes in your menstrual cycle, irregular menstrual cycles, infertility. Testosterone's really important for fertility in females. uh, Sleep disturbances, insomnia, and then decreased bone density. Um, so why has this been happening? And we've talked about this already in this podcast. The environmental factors. We are just uh, onslaughted with things that we are exposed to in terms of our food quality and what's in our food, in terms of our air, our water, our facial and hair care products, like all of the things that our body basically experiences on a day-to-day basis is just so different than it was 50 years ago. And it's why it has become such a big problem because so many of them are endocrine disrupting chemicals. And so they basically interfere with hormonal function and also hormonal production. And the thing to understand too is they limit our cells being able to experience the true endogenous, like our body making of hormones. So the estrogen that floats around in our body isn't even being experienced by our cells because our cells are just being overloaded with the exogenous, endocrine disruptors, these xenoestrogens that are in all of the products that we're experiencing. So your body doesn't even get to experience true estrogen in a lot of cases because it just has so much xenoestrogen exposure that that's what the cells are taking on. And so with testosterone, we also see this really low testosterone because what happens when we have higher body fat percentage because of unhealthy metabolism, unhealthy inflammation levels, and also these endocrine disruptors and these chemicals, our body will store in fat tissue. The more fat tissue you have, the more aromatization you create. That means your testosterone will turn into estrogen. And so you may have had okay testosterone levels, but you're converting it all and you're hyper aromatizing it because of too much adipose tissue and too much body fat. And so there's a lot of reasons that testosterone ends up low, but birth control, I mentioned on average, women who take birth control have 50% lower free testosterone levels than women who have not taken birth control. 50% lower during and after. Because I think a lot of women can attest to this. when they take birth control for a problem, the problem probably wasn't solved on birth control. And when they come off of birth control, things don't go back to like magical rainbows and butterflies with your hormones. Typically, people coming off of birth control experience disruption in their cycle, in their hormone balance, in all the things for multiple months, if not years. And so don't believe that birth control is just this like you put it, you put a little band-aid over something, and then when you take the band-aid off, nothing was affected by it.
Well, you're shutting down your natural hormone
Exactly.
production, right? And so then your body, it's like almost going through puberty again when you're coming off of it. And all of these are things that we didn't know, you know, really need to support your drainage and detox pathways. You can have these crazy estrogen swings post birth control that lead to cottage cheese legs or, whatever it might be, swelling and water retention for people. And that's why we did a podcast most recently on how to prepare your body to come off of birth control. But I can attest to this. I mean, my testosterone's low. It's been low. I can remember in my 20s having it tested and they were like, yeah, you're like a woman in menopause. And I just checked it again postpartum and it's also still very low. So I'm going to go on it, but not for a period of time. I'll give my body probably a good solid 6 to 8 months, and then I'll recheck levels and just kind of see where I'm at, and then decide at that point in time. Do I want to wait a full year? Because again, postpartum,
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that are shifting and kind of renormalizing, but I don't think that I'll ever have higher levels of testosterone. I was also on birth control for over a decade.
Yeah.
So, it's just one of those things where we have to consider like you can do all the your diet and your lifestyle and support, your testosterone naturally. And I want to bring this up, and I think we're going to talk about it under the chronic stress bucket. But a lot of women who we see with low hormones across the board or really low testosterone have also chronically dieted, right?
Mhm.
So they have just essentially put their body into a state of chronic stress. And that's not even looking at the stressors of life. But we know that what happens when you chronically diet, meaning that you're trying to get weight off, you're eating 12,000 calories, maybe less, 12,000 calories, 1,200 calories or less. This chronically low calorie intake signals something called sex hormone binding globulin. And so we produce more of this, and that reduces your testosterone levels further. So it's a pretty telltale indication when I see somebody come in with labs that SHBG is above an 80, we've probably been chronically dieting here. And this is going to be a big part of why your testosterone levels are low, amongst, of course, many other things.
Mhm.
And so that's another thing to kind of really think about with your history is not just medications taken or nutrient deficiencies and things that we need to build our hormones, but also really thinking about how well have you fed your body or deprived your body.
Yeah, and so a little bit about my case, and I think I see this with a lot of people too, is with that history of not only under eating, but people that overtrained. Whether it was in a competitive performance aspect, like you were running marathons or you were doing, obstacle courses. In my case, it was CrossFit. A lot could at this time, keeping, I'm not going to get rid of my business with Liz. I'm not going to get rid of
Your family.
family. I'm not going to get rid of things that are just life. I I have tried so many natural routes to bring hormone levels back up and they won't. And so I know that sure, my stress may be a part of that and I've pulled back stress in a lot of other areas and I feel so much better with those changes that I've made in terms of my exercise, in terms of diet, in terms of, pulling back things that I don't need in my life, to-dos on my task list that I don't need with like, I don't have to be a part of the PTO too. I don't have to do all of these extra things. I feel so much better, but my hormone levels were still really, really low. And I know it's because of years of beating my body into the ground that was just not natural for my body. And my stress system is kind of PTSD from that. And so I am now on progesterone because my cycle was getting shorter and shorter. I was like 24 days. Every 24 days, I was getting a period and it was lasting like 7 to 8 days. And then my testosterone for years has been my free levels have been under a 20. I'm sorry, my total levels have been under 20. My free levels have been under 1 for multiple years. And I was like, "You know what? Why? Why do I still just suffer from feeling, I could feel a lot better putting these things in place." And since putting both in place, very low dose progesterone, I'm on 50 milligrams just the second half of my cycle. My period is now 28 days. It lasts 4 days and it's basically asymptomatic. And my testosterone has helped with my sex drive. It's helped with my energy. It helps with my mental clarity. And I'm on a very moderate dose. And so I want to talk about types and forms that you put in place. Because, okay, if you're listening to this and you're like, yes, Becca and Liz, I would like to explore this. First, make sure you cover the boxes because hormones do not take you for a walk. They do not feed you healthy food. They do not help you manage your stress. You need to be doing those things. And that is why I went that route finally, because I was like, shit, I have done everything. Like I live about as healthy of a life as I can at this point, aside from my stress. Yes, give me the things. You need to cover those bases first. When you have, get blood work and meet with someone that knows what they're talking about. You can meet with our team. If you're wanting to go to like the, medical route team, the company we work with, Vital, is great with that. There aren't a lot of them out there that I know of. I've met a handful, but Vital's who obviously we've worked with. And so I can reference to them. But you need to meet with someone that knows what they're looking at and not just blanketing pellets or, a standard cookie cutter protocol of hormones and who don't even think they need blood work to do it. Like you need it. Okay. And then with testosterone, we prefer injections.
Mm-hmm.
They are the most consistent dose across the course of the week. You typically take it 2 to 4 times a week. It is the most bioavailable. You don't have to deal with the potential lack of absorption via the GI system and or the skin. It's just very inconsistent with people to people, what you're going to see with someone's gastrointestinal absorption abilities and with their skin type. Like
Yeah.
Liz has a different skin type than I do. People that live in Arizona have a different climate than I do. Like all of those things matter when you're talking absorption. And then also
Are
when
you
you're
rubbing it
talking
off?
rubbing it off onto my children, my pets, my husband wouldn't care. He's on testosterone, but like all of these things that you're considering with creams work for people. It's better than nothing. I'll say that. Creams are by far better than nothing. It's just not an optimal situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only situation that I like creams is if maybe somebody is just wanting to kind of test and see like how I do. And this is actually more estrogen progesterone cream, but or intravaginally or on the labia, right? So when we're
Mhm.
thinking about vaginal dryness, there is a lot to be said about testosterone and estrogen in terms of tissue integrity. So as people age, they're dealing with that vaginal dryness. Some different suppositories can be helpful, or you can put that cream in that area. But I don't personally love creams just across the board. Again, because we're thinking about not just like the absorption in different parts of your body and like how much are you actually getting, but also so pump size. Most of them are going to be pumps that will give you a pretty even dose, but not always. And then people, because they're like, oh, I don't feel anything yet, decide that more is better, and
Mhm.
it's not always better. So I definitely would agree. I love injections mainly because you know exactly how much you're putting in and that it's going directly to the bloodstream. And then with your blood work, you can start to look and compare and see your levels as they rise. And now you know, okay, if I'm improved on some things, but not all the way, here's how I can titrate up just a little bit more. But if you're doing like creams and you're doing like 1 pump versus 2 pump, you're like doubling it. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't need double. So and I don't like pellets. We've talked about this before. We have another podcast that's all about the different types of HRT. The biggest thing that we would say here is think about riding a roller coaster. You get it. It's a huge surge of hormones. You probably felt really good or you felt really crappy. And then now you can't get it out of your body either. It was like way too much. And so then you just ride this roller coaster and it's not consistent. You don't feel the best. In most cases, I do have one person who loves her pellets and she's done great. She does not have crazy swings, but again, they've also designed her pellet to be low dose and very specific to her. So, as we kind of talked about earlier with ideal levels, the biggest thing is that you need to communicate your symptoms to whoever you're working with. And I think this is hard all around, no matter what you're doing, to be honest with you. If you are changing a thyroid medication, if you are changing a hormone replacement, like I was telling Becca, I think a couple of weeks ago, there was a great reel that Dr. Fitz did. She's a doctor in our area, and she's basically saying to all women out there, PSA, public service announcement, maybe you're on hormone replacement therapy, you felt good, and then now your hot flashes are back. It's because there's so many things that are changing internally because of all of the inputs and things that are coming in, whether that is from your diet or it's from stress. If people at work, somebody cut you off of traffic, like the jerk at Starbucks this morning. It was a disaster. The Starbucks by my house really needs a lot of help, but we still go there.
Hmm.
So you know what I'm saying? Like there's so many like triggers that can really impact just your physiology and how things function and how your cells communicate and inflammation, that it's important to not only have that lab work, but it's also important, I would say, to journal how you feel when you are starting something. What symptoms are you seeing as an improvement, and start one thing at a time. I'm always talking with our medical team and our partners there, and they definitely align that less is,
Mhm.
low and slow, less is more when you're starting out, and do one thing at a time. Majority of the practitioners at least would agree with this, not all. And I just think that it's important, because what if something goes wrong? And how do you really know that what you're taking is valuable? Because I don't know about you, but I don't like just throwing money down the drain, whether it's a supplement or a medication or a peptide. I want to actually know that what I am doing is working well for me, and I'm stopping something if it's not helping me, or I'm not noticing a dramatic difference, right? And if you have testosterone that you're bringing in, and we'll talk about the aromatization here, I think that's a great way to start. We either start progesterone or testosterone first. I think it's a great way to start. Track your symptoms, see how you feel, and then whatever symptoms are then lingering, we look at what can be the alternative to help. Right. So if somebody's really struggling with sleep and mood, and they're going to kill their husband the week before their period comes, then maybe they should start on progesterone. I think that would be a smarter option, because it doesn't matter if they don't fix that aspect about their sex drive, right? Because he's not going to want to have sex with you if you're being batshit crazy. So that's just, again, for the person, I think it's important to evaluate your symptoms, but then also track your symptoms and follow up accordingly to, whatever that schedule is. Our medical team does about every 10 to 12 weeks.
Mhm.
I think anytime that you're making a drastic change, if this is a thyroid medication, then maybe you're looking at something like 6 to 8 weeks, because you want to see, is this the right dose for that person? But with hormones, they do take a little bit longer. And that's why they're generally looking about that 3-month view. Um, so I just want to throw that in there, because there's going to be so many different opinions about total levels and free levels and all these things. Just was chatting with a couple of clients and even my sister about this. I'm like, the number one thing that I would always ask is, since you've gone on this, what has improved and what symptoms are you still struggling with, before we make a decision as to that's the thing that we're going to pull that lever,
Mhm.
right? Because there's so many levers. So I wanted to throw that in there. And then I think, again, when we think about the aromatization aspect, so if you guys have never seen a Dutch test, we've done a review of the Dutch hormone analysis that we really like. And on that page, it will show you the mother hormone pregnenolone, how it goes into your androgens, your DHEA, and then into testosterone. It'll show you two little arrows. Do you aromatize testosterone into estrogen? Because we see this a lot, where your estradiol is higher than your estrone or
Estriol.
estriol, thank you. And so we're seeing that there is aromatization happening there. And if you are already a little bit more estrogen dominant, and we're trying to offset that with progesterone, you probably want to have a support in here to block that aromatization, and or have something that's helping you detoxify your estrogens appropriately.
Mhm.
Because speaking from personal experience, this happens for men, but also for women. We talked about hair loss earlier. You can start to aromatize into estrogen and experience hair loss because you're pushing it all into estrogen. So I would just be cautious of that. I would be doing a Dutch test. If I'm on HRT, I'm going to be doing blood work and a Dutch test, because for me, I want to know that my estrogen is going down the right pathways. And I've caught this several times with clients. We've worked with breast cancer clients, post, cancer patients, where we always want to check this.
Mhm.
And I just think that it's worth that $300, because at the end of the day, or 350, whatever it is now, at the end of the day, what if you're doing all of this with hormones, and then things are getting worse cellularly, and you're putting yourself at a higher risk, or you're experiencing other estrogen dominant like symptoms, which can lead to many of the symptoms that we already talked about with testosterone. So you're trying to fix one thing, but then you're making another thing worse, because you're not properly
Yeah.
following up to see how your body is utilizing it.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely, and whenever someone goes on exogenous hormones, I almost always put in additional liver support. Whether it is like if someone's on estrogen, I will typically put in a low dose DIM and calcium deglucarate, because DIM in a lot of research does not lower estrogen. It helps it detoxify better, down better pathways. And so I have no problem putting in a little bit of DIM and some calcium deglucarate, or other, methylated B vitamins, or things of that NAC, things of that nature, that are going to help the exogenous hormones that you're now putting into the body, which is an additional task on the liver to process. I would put something in place in almost every case to be able to help the body process those new hormones that are coming into play. And in most cases, especially perimenopause and postmenopause, if you're putting in testosterone, perimenopause, absolutely progesterone. You want to put in progesterone, which will help kind of buffer the loss and fluctuations of estrogen that happen at that time. And then also, because Liz was saying, testosterone aromatizes into estrogen. You put in testosterone, guess what? You're probably going to end up with a little bit more estrogen too. And so you may not need estrogen during perimenopause, but you're going to probably want progesterone to help buffer. And then postmenopause, most people probably need all three. Not saying in a blanket statement, but in most cases, that is probably where we're going to be just because of now we have the full loss of estrogen. We have the full loss of progesterone. I don't care if you don't have a uterus. Progesterone benefits sleep. It benefits mood. It does not just benefit the balance of estrogen with the uterine lining. You still want to have estrogen and progesterone together. You don't want just one. But you're
If you want to
probably,
optimize too, though. So
we're talking
this is,
optimization.
yeah.
I'm not talking just like, symptom management. I'm talking true optimization. You will want all three.
And I think that it would be good here to share some of the books that people should be reading, because so many women have been gaslit for years and they're just told that they have something wrong with them. They have ADHD, they have, anxiety or depression and take this SSRI and all these things when really it's the loss of hormones that is impacting them. So I think Estrogen Matters is a really great book. I do
Mhm.
like The New Menopause by Dr. Mary Claire. I know you've read.
Menopause. The Great Menopause Myth is another good one. Yeah, those three are all great books. There's so many out there.
Because
Um,
estrogen is something that's gotten a bad rap, but it's very protective to the body in
Very
many
effective.
ways. And when we think about longevity of life, and when I say longevity of life, guys, what I mean here is like that you're actually not stuck in a wheelchair in a bed just laying there like a vegetable. No, that longevity of life to me is that you can get up and you can do the things that you want. You can play with your kids or your grandkids and you can go out with your girlfriends and do whatever the things that you do when you're older. Maybe you play bingo or I don't know, whatever it is, right? Like that's what I'm thinking. Like longevity of life is not just that I lived till I was 90, but that I actually lived my life and being able to do the things that I want. And so we know that when we think about Alzheimer's and dementia, and again, all of these kind of ailments that generally are onset later in life, hormones can be helpful.
mhm. Yeah.
So that's something to think about too. And people are like, well, it's an investment. And then I have to pay for this out of pocket and things like that. Yeah, now if you read up all these books and you get an OBGYN and they understand and thank God, that Dr. Mary Claire has been going around and many, many others talking about menopause now that is becoming more, I would say,
Mainstream
yeah, mainstream
a
for
little bit.
progesterone and estradiol. Still testosterone might be something that you want to layer in.
Halle Berry brought testosterone to the forefront. Halle Berry talked about how she's taken testosterone and how
Yeah.
it's helped a lot. And that's good. Like we want these people, making it more normalized that this is something that you can benefit from because again, I hate that we are in this world of it's normal. It's normal to not have any energy, to not remember things, to feel like you're ballooning up and gaining weight and you just don't feel as good at 50 or 60 that you did in your 40s. Like, no, I don't accept that. I will not accept that. And if it means that I pay a few $100 every couple months for my hormones, so be it. I am more than happy to shell out that cash so that I have a good marriage because my sex drive is in a good place, so that I feel good about myself and in my skin, so that I don't feel like I'm going crazy all the time. Like, to me, take my money. Absolutely take my money because I'm going to be a happier person for it. And what's worth the money if I'm not happy? So, we wanted to talk about today about, an area that many people will not talk about because it's not quote unquote FDA approved. It's not something that your OB is going to ever mention to you because they will not prescribe it. You have to go out and get it yourself. So if you want to talk to a team that is knowledgeable in this aspect, that can help you understand if this is the right step for you, please reach out to our team. We're more than happy to run the labs. We're more than happy to sit down and analyze it with you and discuss if this is a good next step or is this a step that maybe is a few steps away and you need to optimize some other things first. Because we will never ignore that. Like, I'm not someone that's like, just give the person what they want. No, we're going to give you what you need and then we'll give you what you want. So have an amazing rest of your Friday and we will see you next week.